The Heirs by Bess Aldrich. Old Emmeline drove up in front of the county courthouse, climbed out of the buggy, and tied her horse to the one hitching post left in town. Her husband used to say he hoped that post would stay there as long as he lived, for you wouldn't catch him putting good money into a car. Well, Pa had been dead a year now, and here was the old post as stout as ever. Emmeline started up the long walk, which led to the entrance of the big brick building. It had a weather-beaten look, but so did old Emmeline. She was slight of build and as brown and brittle as the elm leaves falling now in the courthouse yard, but her eyes were black and bright. Her bony hands clutched a shabby purse, whose broken clasp was held together by a rubber band. Her sunken lips worked ceaselessly on the sunflower seed she was chewing. Her withered face had a bewildered look, and with reason. For in the next half hour the judge would announce whether Emmeline was capable of looking after her own affairs or was in need of a guardian. Competent, incompetent. Lawyer Marks had explained them to her with patient care. It all went back to Pa's will. She could say that will word for word like a child speaking a piece. It didn't sound a bit like Pa's talk, but that was because Lawyer Marks had written it. Inasmuch as I deeded a farm to each of my children, namely Edward Smith and Ivy Smith Langemeyer, at the time of their respective marriages, I hereby give, devise, and bequeath to my beloved wife, Emmeline Smith, the home farm and all my other remaining property, both real and personal, with the right to sell, reinvest, or use as she may wish. To my beloved wife. Old Emmeline had been more moved by those words than by the outright gift of the farm. Pa had never used language like that in his whole life. He probably didn't really say it then either, but he hadn't made Lawyer Marks take it out, so he must have liked it. At so slight a fire did old Emmeline try to warm her heart. Eddie and Ivy were stepchildren, but she had cared for them since their mother's death when they were 8 and 10 respectively, first as the hired girl, and then as their father's wife. And now they were middle-aged and had brought suit to have her declared incompetent. The hearing had been yesterday. When it was over, the county judge had said he would take it under advisement and render his decision this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Lawyer Marks had told her not to come to town, that he would drive out and tell her the decision. But she had come anyway. She guessed she was just as interested in it as the rest of them. As she trudged up the long walk, she thought over all that had happened yesterday. It still amazed and confused her. The things the children had said on the witness stand. The lawyer asking Eddie, "What would you say as to her mental condition?" And Eddie, not looking toward her, "Well, I would say it was poor." And the lawyer asking him to tell any incidents to the court, with Eddie saying she walked a lot in the woods, gazing up at the tops of trees, that she rocked all the time on the porch, staring into space, that she had grown so neglectful of her work she hadn't even set a hen last spring. She could have told them it was the first time she ever had a chance to watch the birds in the timber, that she never before had leisure to walk on the porch, that she decided not to set any hens when she found out that she'd set about 1,200 of the squawking things. But when the judge talked to her later, she had felt just stubborn and wouldn't give any explanation. Ivy had gone on the stand too, telling about Emmeline giving money to the church circle. More at one time than Pa ever let her in his whole life, Ivy had said. Then she told about Emmeline buying all those new things. You could hardly get into the house for all the purchases standing around, Ivy had told the judge. A new couch, dining room table and chairs, a bedroom set, 3 rugs not even unrolled yet, new dishes still in their excelsior. Why, at the rate she's a-going, she won't have anything left. Here the judge had interrupted Ivy and told her to stick to what she had observed. She won't have anything left for Eddie and me, was what Ivy really had meant. Emmeline was in the courthouse now and walking down the hall. Yesterday she had felt timid. Today she knew right where to go. It made her feel important. This was the room. Eddie and his wife came in and took seats on the other side. Neither one looked her way. The children's lawyer came in, then the court clerk. Lawyer Marks nodded to her, but he looked surprised and maybe a bit cross. And there was Ivy, waddling in, late and hurried, coughing asthmatically. The judge came in and took his seat. The room grew quiet. Old Emmeline snapped the rubber band on the purse and chewed her sunflower seed. What was that the judge was saying? Incompetent? Now, which one was that? It was the guardian one. Ah, well, she had almost known from the first that was the way it would turn out. They were all gathering around the desk now, and there was some fussing with papers. It reminded old Emmeline that she had a paper of her own. She removed the rubber band from the purse and took out a long envelope. Then she stood up, her lips quivering nervously. She walked through the group to the judge and handed him the paper. His eyebrows shot up, and he asked, "What's this?" "The deed," she said. "The deed to the farm. See, it's all drawed up legal, before a notary. I was deedin' it to the children, giving it to 'em, the way Pa said in his will, the right to sell, reinvest, as use as she may wish. I was goin' to live in that little tenant house. I didn't need the big house or the farm, neither one. I got a little money of my own, egg money, that is, and the cash Pa left me in the bank I was aimin' to keep. Them rugs and furniture and dishes Ivy was telling about was the furnishin' for the cottage. I was plumb enjoyin' gettin' them together all year." The silence in the room was so deep that only Ivy's breathing could be heard. Emmeline's black, beady eyes darted toward her and Eddie, both standing there stupefied. "But all that was when I was still right in the head," she volunteered cheerfully. "Now," she looked at the judge again, "now it ain't legal, is it? The property's got to be held in trust for me as long as I live, ain't it?" The judge cleared his throat. "Yes," he said, "that's correct." Emmeline's bony fingers reached over and picked up the paper. She tore it through once and dropped it in the wastebasket. Then she turned and walked past the lawyers and the middle-aged children, out of the courtroom's heavy silence.